Everybody, I'm your host, Photo Joseph, and today we are talking about using the Nik plugins inside of Affinity Photo. And you might be thinking, hold on a second, I thought these were plugins just for Photoshop. They are not just for Photoshop, they also work inside of Affinity Photo. There is, however, a bit of a kind of an anomaly to how they get installed. I can't explain why it's this way, but because it is not a simple install it and find them, I want to show you how to install it. Now, there is actually a web page that I encourage you to look at. It looks like this, and the URL for that is lengthy. So let me pull up, I made a short version of it. Take a screenshot right now, quick, Command-Shift-3, or what is the equivalent on Windows? Print screen, I guess? I'm not actually sure. But quick, grab that jal.bz/34 lowercase xn uppercase ssb. Grab that URL. That is the shortcut. Got your screenshot? 3, 2, 1, it's gone. And that will take you to this page, which has the full installation instructions, both for Mac and Windows. I'm obviously running on a Mac today, so I'm going to show you how to do this on a Mac. I think it's basically the same on Windows, but if you want to install it, then that's what you're going to have to follow. So I'm going to show you how to install it because it is a little bit convoluted. So let's just start with, and I've already got it installed, so I'm just going to kind of show you the steps. But when you run the installer, first you get through your basic accepting everything, continue, accept, and here at this page where it says add the Nik collection to which host apps, the Affinity Photo does not show up in here. So what you have to do is you click the little plus button down here as if you were going to add an app, but you're not going to add an app. Wherever you like, and I recommend doing it in the applications folder because that makes it easy, you need to make a new folder in here to install the plugins into. You'll notice, I don't know why, you'll notice there is no new folder buttons. You have to know the keyboard shortcut. So Command-Shift-N to make a new folder, and then you call it whatever you want. Obviously, I recommend you name it something more clever than that. I named mine Nik for Affinity. There it is. So I already did this. I already created that. Okay, so I created that folder. That's what you do. You create that empty folder, create that and select it, and then it will show up here. In fact, I can do this. I'll just do it like this. I will select that. Where did it go? Nik for Affinity. Select that, and it shows up down here as Adobe Photoshop Custom 1. I know that looks weird, but this is correct. Then you click on continue, and then you just continue through the installation. And what it is going to do, I'm going to quit the installer now because I've already done this, is what that is going to create is inside of that folder, it is going to install, not that one, inside of the Nik for Affinity folder, it's going to install a folder called DxO, and inside of that, it's going to have all the plugins, each inside of their own folder. You don't have to look at these, but that's what it does. And then the next step is to go over to Affinity Photo and open up the preferences. And in the preferences, you go to, there's a bunch of different categories in here. You go to the Photoshop plugins category. Over here where it says plugins search folders, you have to add that folder. So you click on add, you find the actual DxO folder. So let's go to my Command-Shift-A to go to my applications. I would go to Nik for Affinity, and you're selecting the DxO folder, not just the Nik for Affinity folder, but the DxO folder inside of it. Then click OK. I'm going to cancel because I've already done it, and it shows it up here. And then there's this button down here. Now I've already done it, but it's going to say Authorize Global. You just click that, and it does this whole authorization thing. And then, sorry, and then you click on this, Allow Unknown Plugins to be Used. This has to be enabled. Once all this is done, so you install it to an empty folder, you add the folder here, you authorize the global, you click on Allow Unknown, then you click Close, and it is going to say the Affinity Photo needs to be relaunched. It'll actually have a button that just says relaunch. You click that, it quits, it comes back up, and there you go. So I know it's a process, but once that's done, you should never have to go into there again. Hopefully I haven't destroyed anything. And now when you look under your filters, so there's your filters menu, plugins, you will see the Nik collection, and you'll see them all there. So not the most intuitive thing in the world to do, but that's how it works, and it does work. So now that we've got it in there, let's open up a couple of photos. So what I'm going to do first is open up just a kind of variety of photos here, and just to play with the plugins to show you some of the new film looks that are in the Nik 2.5 collection. So that's going to be the second part of this first part. I'm going to show you the new film stocks in here. We're going to look at those over a variety of photos. And then in the second half of today's show, we're going to go through and do some actual content creation, some of, nice work effects, whatever, on some photos. When you first open a raw photo in Affinity Photo, it is similar to going through Adobe Camera Raw I guess that's what, yeah, Adobe Camera Raw, where it takes you through a raw decoding process that you do whatever you want to do at the raw level, and then you hit OK to have a final rendered file. So in here, I've opened this up. I can see up here at the top, it says raw, and you'll notice that there's a button up here that says develop. Before I can do anything, like, I can't get to my plugins or anything like that in here. I have minimal controls in here until I develop it. So really, if you're used to the Adobe Photoshop paradigm of opening a raw file into Camera Raw and then it opens into Photoshop, that is effectively what's happening here. So in here, I can do things like adjust my exposure at the raw level. If you're going to adjust white balance, this is definitely a place to do it. Whether you're correcting or just trying to be creative about it, this is definitely a place to do that. So you take care of whatever basic corrections you want, and then you click on develop, and now you have a file. There it goes. Now you have a file that is a pixel-based file that can be edited however you want. You can even see over here, it says, there's my background image, it says pixel, it calls it a pixel-based file. So we know that this is now ready to go like any other photo. Now, if I want to go into my filters, I can. So here now I have access to the filters, plugins, Nik Collection, and we're going to jump into Color Effects Pro 4 because that is where the new presets are, the new film looks are. So let's jump into this. Pardon me. And let's make this nice and big. And I will go over here to the film categories. Now, just in case there's some people here who've never seen this tool before, Color Effects Pro specifically, I'm going to give you a quick tour of it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I think a lot of people have already seen the plugins. But for those who are new to this, give me just a minute here to give you a quick tour. Basically, the way that this is called Color Effects Pro 4, the way Color Effects Pro 4 works is you have a series of filters on the left, and then you apply those filters into any order you like on the right. And the order of those filters matters. The image, think of it like a waterfall, it cascades through the filters, it comes through this filter, passes to the next one, to the next one. So the reason that I point this out, and a really easy way to interpret this, is imagine that you take a colorization filter, like you make the image all red, and then after that you put a black and white filter. Well, you will have just made the whole image black and white, so that red is now gone. If you reverse the order, you do a black and white pass first, then the image becomes black and white or monochromatic, and then you add a red pass on top of that, or a red filter, gel, whatever, then the black and white image has red on top of it, as opposed to the color image having red on top of it and then being entirely turned into black and white. So the order absolutely matters, and it's an important thing to keep in mind. So to add another filter over here, you just look at the filters on the left, and you have tons of filters in here to choose from. And these are broken down into categories, and these categories have a lot of overlap. They're basically categories that the engineers thought made sense, but it's completely arbitrary. So if you look under film, here's some film effects. Well, wedding. What might wedding photographers want? Here's a collection of things that a wedding photographer probably wants. Doesn't mean you can't use the other ones. It's just telling you you might want them. If you're doing architecture, doing nature, doing portrait, doing travel, and so on. Then there's the favorites, which is super handy because there's so many of these. We look at the all, there's quite a few in here. When you find one that you really like and you think you might use often, you can mark it as a favorite by simply clicking on the little yellow star. So like next to high key, I'll click on that little yellow star. Now when I go to favorites, there's high key. And if I decide to change my mind, I click on that and it just disappears from that list. So the favorites can be super handy. So now let's add a filter. Over here on the right, you'll see it says levels and curves. That's the filter that I've already added to this. And I go, okay, let's add a, I don't know, bleach bypass to it. So I click on that and I look over here on the right and I go, hold on a minute, what happened to my levels and curves? Well, whenever you select a filter, it is going to replace the active filter holder. It's going to replace what's in that filter holder. If you want to add another filter, then you have to click on add filter down here. And it adds an empty filter holder. And now when I go in and I add another one, we'll just grab a random one and I add that. Now I have that bleach bypass and that dark and lighten center after it. And if at any point I wanted to rearrange them, it is simply a case of clicking and dragging on that to rearrange it. And now that swaps the order. So that's how that works. So there's your basic tour. Obviously, there's a lot more to this, but there's the basics of it. All right, let me get rid of this. I'm gonna click the X to get rid of that filter holder. And now I've got this filter holder, which has something in it. I can click on anything to replace it. Or if I just really want to completely start from scratch, honestly, it doesn't matter. I can empty that out. And now I have an empty filter holder. And the image, of course, is the image that I started with. So let's start with film. And I'm going to go to the category that has the new films. It's called Film Effects Modern Branded. And the branded is just an indicator that we have Fuji types, Kodak types, and so on built into here. Then over here on the right, under that filter, you pull this down, and these are all the different film stocks that are built into this. And I'm going to tell you, some of these are really good. You'll find film stocks here that really do have that true film look to it. They're all designed to really look like it. For those of us who used to shoot film back in the 1800s, you'll recognize some of these names, and you'll look at that and you might pull it up and go, oh my God, that really is just how I remember it. It's kind of cool, kind of cool. The new ones are up here at the top labeled, curiously enough, new, go figure. And there are 5 new film stocks. There's the Agfa Preciso 100, the Fuji FP 100C, the Fuji Instax, the Fuji Provia 400X, and the Lomo Red Scale 100, which is not a direct film translation. It's more of a kind of an effecty one that they put in there. So you have these different film stocks in here, and then of course all these ones that were already in place. And you can see as I roll over these, it's nice. You get an instant update on the main preview of what that looks like. You don't have to apply it. You don't have to click on it to actually see the effect. You can just run through and see them. So if I was going to apply one to this, I don't know, maybe I'd go for like, this is kind of a cool looking one. This Fuji Instax looks pretty good. And then once you like it, there's a lot of other things we can do in there to play with it. But let's take a look at some of the other films on different photos just to see what some of them different ones look like. I'll go ahead and click OK. That's going to render that onto the image. And this is now a permanent application. This is pixel-based editing. So at this point, we have altered the pixels. If you want to, if you wanted to save the old image, the original image, then you would duplicate the layer before it. And I'm going to show you in a little bit a trick if you forget to do that, how to get back to it. And we'll come to that in a moment. But let me just open up some other photos in here. I've got, let's see here, here's a portrait. I'm going to open up this one. In fact, also I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to change to this. I'll just leave it. This is the default processing. I'm just going to leave that as it is. And I'm also going to, before I do anything else to this photo, go back to this one and undo that. There we go. I just wanted to get that back to the starting point. Okay, so this filter here, let's go into the filters, plugins, Nik Collection Color Effects Pro 4, and we'll take a little look-see at the film stocks in here. So I'm going to, let's do a split. Yeah, I'll do a split screen. I'm going to put this right down the middle of our face. So this will really show us the original on the left, the filtered one on the right. So you can very clearly see what's happening in here. And like this one, you know, this looks pretty good, right? That's kind of a cool effect on there. As I roll through these, you see the different film looks, very, very clearly different, unique looks on those. And you find one that, you know, maybe applies to what you're doing. Provia is kind of a nice skin one. It's quite subtle, quite soft. It looks pretty nice on there. I don't know, maybe I'd go for this Agfa Preciso, a little bit more punchy in there. Different film stocks for different photos. Let's cancel that. I'm going to open another picture, and just again to see some different takes of these filters and see how they look. Do I want to do anything to this photo? No, I think I'm going to leave that one as it is. Develop, open this up as a standard photo. And then there we go, filters, plugins, Nik Collection, Color Effects Pro 4. And I'm focusing right now on Color Effects Pro 4 because that is where the new film stocks are in this version 2.5. Okay, so back again. Oh, and also you may have noticed when I go back into the filter, the previous thing that I had applied is automatically called up there. So you can, of course, at this point, start over, throw it away. But if you had multiple effects here, those would be reapplied again. So that makes it easy to jump back in and just reapply the same thing. On that note, if you've done something really complex and you want to save it for later, you do have this button here that says Save Recipe. That saves think of the recipe as a preset collection. It is a preset of all the filters, all of these that you're seeing up here all at once, and those would get saved down here under recipes. And you can see there's a variety of recipes that are already included in here, but you can, of course, create your own. Okay, so let's go back into this, see what these different film stocks look like. Again, there's the Agfa, one of the Fujis, another Fuji, and so on and so on. Just some nice film looks. And you know, if you're looking at these thinking, well, they're not like that dramatically different, you're right. And that's the point, isn't to have some crazy wild effect. The point of these is to mimic those original film stocks, to mimic the color reproduction of them. How did that film treat greens and blues and reds? And how did they treat contrast? And how much grain did they have? All of that is meant to be recreated by these. So no, they're not dramatically different. It's not like looking at some crazy preset library where it's you know, way over here and way over there. That's not the point. The point here is to have these genuine film looks to them that you can obviously modify to your heart's content, but it gives you a starting point that looks like original film. And that's kind of the whole point of this. That's the Easter photo. Okay, develop that one. And what I'm going to do in here is play with applying different film looks to different parts of the photo. So we're going to utilize control points to do it in this case. And in another photo example, we're going to do it using layers in Affinity Photo. So lots of different approaches to doing this. It just very much depends on what you're after. And as with anything, understanding all the different approaches will help you to decide which way makes sense for your photo and your desired effect, right? There is no right answer to this. I'm just going to show you the tools that are available. You can then decide when you're working on a photo what makes the most sense. So here we have a photo of my adorable little child's hands as he was counting out his Easter eggs on Sunday. And let's go into Color Efex Pro 4. And I'm going to run through some of the different film looks on here, starting with the top. And so I'll just apply this one. And I look at that and I go, okay, that looks like that. And there's that one, and there's that one, there's that one, there's that one. Okay, so these are the new ones. And I'm just going to focus on the new ones now. So as I look through these, I look at this one, this Fuji Instax, and I go, I really like what it's done to his skin. The hand color, it's quite pale. It's kind of a little bit washed out, but I really like the way that looks. I think that's really kind of pretty. But look at the eggs. The eggs are just like gone, right? All the color's gone. If we look at the original, let me just choose this. If we compare to the original, and by the way, this compare button up here, if you just press and hold that, it toggles back and forth. Or I can do a side by side, which is a little tough on this smaller window. Okay, I can't hide that. Oh, wait, no, I can. There we go. Let's do this. Put those side by side there. That's better. You can see here the eggs very clearly just totally washed out. So I don't like that, but I do like it on his hands. Okay, well, let's see what else I've got in here. I go to this Provia one. I actually kind of like how that one looks on the eggs. That one looks pretty good on there. And then this one I don't like at all. So, okay, so here's what I've got. I want to use the Fuji Instax on his hands, and I'm going to use the Fuji Provia on the rest of the image. So I'm going to start by going to the Fuji Instax, and I've just totally, what did I do? Change the contrast there accidentally. Let me go back to the full size. And I want to apply this just to his hands. So I'm going to use control points for that. Down here you have control points. If you're not familiar with control points, let me explain this briefly. A control point is a real-time mask that is generated based off of the pixel values of where you click on. So on a really simple idea, really simple view, imagine that you have a green egg. Wait, have a green egg. You have a green egg against a blue background. If you drop a control point on the green egg, it is going to select the green egg perfectly and not the blue background. It's very, very simple like that. Now it does get more advanced, but that is it at its core. So if I want to apply this filter just to his hands, I go to control points. I have two types. I have a positive control point and a negative. All a negative is saying to apply the filter at 0% opacity. In other words, don't apply it at all. And a positive one is applied at 100% opacity. You can actually change that slider once you add it, so it doesn't technically matter what you do, but I'm gonna go ahead and grab the plus and drop that on his hand. And right away, you probably saw that, let's just go ahead and into the split here, that his hand has changed, but the rest of the image has not. Now, there's always gonna be a little bit of spill. That's part of what makes it look so natural, but you can see it's a very clear difference in there. And if I want to know exactly what's being affected, here's that control point. If I click on the little mask icon here, I can see what precisely has been grabbed. And so now I can move this around and I can see how that mask is changing in real time as I move it around. I can make it a little bit bigger to get a little bit more of his hand in there. And if I really needed to, like, let's say that, it's not totally selecting this area down here. Let's say that I wanted it to. I'm actually not going to for this case because it's going to look better like this. But if I wanted to, I can add another control point, just click plus and add down here as well, and then enable that mask too. And now I'm seeing a little bit more clear of a mask that's been made. Or let me hit delete on that. I can, while holding down the option key, see the cursor changes to a little plus. I can drag this and reposition it and say, right now I have two of these together. But in this case, just the one on its own is fine. Let me hide the mask. And this actually looks pretty good. So again, before and after, we've got that. Okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to add another control point onto his other hand here and take the opacity down a little bit just so that I have two of them on there, just because. Okay. All right, so that's in place. So now I want to apply a second film type to the rest of the image. So I'll go over here and I'll click on Add Filter. remember, because I'm adding a second filter to this. Go up here to Film Effects Modern, select that, and what did I say that I wanted? It was the Provia, I think. Yeah, I put the Provia on there. So now remember what I said in the beginning of how when you stack these filters, the image passes through all of them top to bottom. So right now I have applied that first film effect just to his hands, but now I'm applying the second film effect to everything. So it's covering what has been done to his hands. Now that's not completely removing it. If I toggle this box off, we'll see that it is still affecting his hands, but I am now concatenating, I'm combining these two film effects on his hands. If I toggle this on and off, you see that his hand does change a little bit. Now, in this case, it's not a dramatic change, but let's just say for the sake of the demo that it was a much more dramatic change. And what I really need to do is ensure that I'm applying this new film look to the entire image except for his hands. That's what I want to do. So what I'll do is, remember up here on this first one, I already created these control points. And here it was really easy. It was just a couple of clicks, but just imagine, if you will, that it was a much more complex series of control points that I'd added, dozens of them spread all over the scene. I don't want to have to recreate that in reverse, which is basically what I need to do here, right? I need the opposite of the mask that I just built. So I'm going to go up here to this little drop-down menu and click on Copy Control Points. That's going to copy, actually only copies the selected ones, so let's make sure that these are both selected here. Go up here and say Copy Control Points, and then I go down here to the new film effect, and I'm going to paste those control points. And by default, it's pasting them the same way that they were before. It was a positive control point, right? So it is now assigning this new filter exactly the same spot as it was on the old one, which is the opposite of what I want. So I need to reverse this. So what I'll do is two steps. First of all, I'm going to, let's open up these control points. I'm going to take each one of these control points and take its opacity from 100 all the way down to 0. And take the second one, the opacity all the way down to 0. So now I'm not applying anything under those control points, but I'm not applying anything anywhere, because when I pasted them in, the opacity of the overall effect got dropped down to 0. So if I toggle this on and off, we're not seeing any change. Now I need to take the opacity of the whole thing and drag that up to 100. So now what I've got is the effect being applied over the entire image, but it's being protected, kept out of these two control points, kept away from the hands. So now I have a combination of the two effects. I've got the first film effect applying to his hands, and the second one applying to the rest of the scene on there. And by doing this, you can combine any number of effects and keep it really, really clean and precise. You see, look around his hand, there's no weird masking going on. There's no weird blending of effects in here. They've just perfectly seamlessly come together, and it looks flawless in there. So that's a really, really cool way to do things. Go ahead and hit OK on here, apply this, and away we go. All right, next one, I'm going to open another photo, and this one here. And on this one, we're going to do a little bit more than just a film effect. So let's go into, oops, got to develop that first. And jump into the filters, plugins, Nik Collection. We're gonna do Color Effects Pro 4 again. But this one, I haven't done any kind of retouching to her skin yet. And I think I'd like to kind of soften up the skin a little bit. So let's get rid of the filter that's on there. And before I do anything else, I want to do some softening. So I'm going to go over to the All Filters menu, scroll through here. And somewhere in here, I have one that is called, what is it called again? Skin Softener. What is it? Probably under S. Nope, it's not. It's not S. It's something else. I should have written down the full name of it. That would have been very, very clever of me. But alas, can't always be clever. Where is it? Oh, for crying out loud. Go to the top. I'm looking for, it's not Glamour Glow. You know, sometimes Dynamic Skin Softener. That's what, oh, I even favorited it so I could find it later. Oops. Okay. So the Dynamic Skin Softener, this is a really cool tool. It softens skin based off of color. And when you first apply it, it may not actually have any effect because the default skin color that it has selected doesn't match your subject. So what you do is you grab the eyedropper, you click on your subject skin color, and now it changes the color there, and that is now what it's affecting. So now it is softening her skin color. And I can go in here and I can do a lot of other effects in here, but I'm just gonna leave it as it is, just a base smoothing pass. Now let's add a filter on top of that and add another film effect to it. So now we're gonna go to the favorites and add that branded film effect to it. And I'm going to choose for this the Fuji Instax, because I like this kind of high key look on her face combined with the smoothing. And this filter effect has a nice high key look. But look at her scarf. See, your scarf is now completely blown out. If we look at the original, there was tons of detail there, but now I've completely blown it out. So this is where those control points come in handy again. I'm going to grab a negative control point, click on the scarf, and it now protects that scarf area. And if it was too much protection, I can drag this opacity slider back and forth and find the right level of that. But that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. I wanted to protect that level of the scarf. There's a little bit under her chin there. Let's grab another negative control point, drop it under there, make that a little bit smaller. Yeah, pretty good in there. There we go. Now we've protected this area of the scarf. So don't forget that you can combine other filters, right? It's not just about the film look. You can combine other filters before or after it. Then once it's on there, you're not limited to applying the filter just to that one region. You can apply it or take it away from any region that you want in there. I want that photo of the road. I think it's still open. Yes, there it is. Okay, so this photo is back to the beginning. Here's a little history slider, little hint. This is going to come in handy later. I'm going to drag this back to the beginning, make sure the photo is the original. It is. Now let's go ahead and apply that same Color Effects Pro. Oh, actually, no, I lied. I wanted to do a totally different filter first. Cancel. There we go. I wanted to apply the Analog Effects Pro. Yes. So some cool analog-y look. So this is kind of a film-ish look, but it's not destined to look like a real film stock. So the other film looks were meant to mimic actual film stocks. This is more of a playful kind of a scattered, let's just see what we can create type of effect. So if I look under here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this tool, but there's a bunch of different combinations of different types of filters in here. And there's some here that are kind of motiony, which are really cool. Like I think some of these are really kind of neat. And if I select this one, because of this coolness that's on there, I really quite dig this overall look in here. So we've got this kind of a cool swirly effect. It's this whole motion blur thing that's happening. And this is like the recipes that we saw in color effects. This is a series of effects. I have a bunch of different effects in here. There's a basic adjustment that's been done, looks like a little contrast, a zoom and rotate blur that doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot here, but then I do the motion blur, and that's clearly having a huge effect. Lens vignetting that's going on, a few different effects. Some may or may not be as strong as others. In fact, let's go to that lens effect and see if we can make it a little bit bigger vignette on there. Cool, there we go. It's a little bit more on there. Okay, so let's just say I was going to do a whole combination of this with something else, but we're running a little bit low on time. So I'll leave this filter here. Let's just say that I really like this look, but this is too much up here, right? What I really want is to have that kind of swirl thing, but I want to kind of blend it with the original trees on there. And I don't have in this motion blur tool a way to change the opacity of just that effect in there. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this. It's going to render this out. And once I've got this in Affinity Photo, what I want to do next is paint a mask between this version of the photo and the original photo underneath it. But I didn't plan for that, right? I'm looking at this now going, whoa, I've only got that one effect. So I could undo it, duplicate the layer, go back into the filter effect, try and find that same filter effect, which, okay, here was just a preset, but maybe it was something I really spent a lot of time customizing. But oops, right? Like, oops, I screwed this up. But here's how you would take care of this. You're basically going to take advantage of undo or the history feature in here. You've got this little slider down here that drags you through history of the photo. In this case, there's only two stages for it, the original and then the affected one. Here's what I'll do. I'll select this background layer, select that. I'm going to hit Command C. I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard. And then I'm going to take the history and drag it back to the beginning, and then hit Command V to paste that on. And I've now pasted the new one, let's call this filtered, against the original. And we'll rename that to original. So now I've got those two different versions in there. And of course, if I want to duplicate any one of these layers, hit Command J, that's going to duplicate it just like in Photoshop. And now you've got a duplicate of that. So now I have these two different layers. So now let's turn that top one back on. Now I can mask between the two. And again, this is very similar to Photoshop, but there is a really cool thing that this does differently that I like a lot. Although Photoshop might have added this recently. I use Photoshop that much. They might have added this in. Anyway, I'm going to create a mask. So I've got this top layer selected. I click on the mask icon. It creates a mask in there. I'm then going to grab the brush tool, hit B for brush. And let's see here. I'm going to hold down Control and Option to change the brush size. So you see you've got this. Oh, and you know what I need to do is I need to reset my mouse size. So I've got my mouse set to zoom in so that you guys can see it easily. Cursor, here we go. But it also changes the brush size on screen so it doesn't look right. Weird. So I need to reset that. Anyway, so now I've got this. So there's my brush size. Hold down Control and Option, and you get this cursor. As I drag up and down, it changes the brush size. Changes the brush softness. You can see the hardness number in there changing. As I go left to right, it changes the overall size. So I want a big, soft brush in here. And I'm going to, let's see here, colors, swatches, there we go. Right now I'm going to be painting white, apparently, is what's selected in there. Let's make this a little bit bigger in here. And if I paint over this, or paint is set to black, sorry. As I paint over this, you can see, let's take my flow up. You can see under the brush as I move this over, an immediate preview of what that's going to look like. So this is the cool thing that I really like about Affinity Photo. And I said Photoshop might have borrowed this feature at this point. But as you roll the mouse over without painting, I'm not actually brushing, I'm just moving the mouse over, you see a preview of what it's going to look like once you actually start painting it in. And so I can see right away that I am completely, because my brush is set to black, I see the color black right there, and the flow is at 100, that I'm going to completely erase the foreground, right? If I paint this in, let's just do this, paint an area in there, I have completely erased that. And if I look at the mask, option click on the mask, we see I've painted a black over white. So that's totally painted through, right? I've cut a hole in that. So let me go here and I'm gonna, let's, did I undo that? Nope, undo that, undo, there we go. I'm going to make sure I'm painting on the mask. Instead of painting at full opacity, I'm gonna take the flow down to like 25 or so. And now as I start to paint through here, I'm gonna get a more gentle effect. It's a little bit too much. Take that down even more. Nice big brush in there. You get a little bit more gentle effect. So now I've got a combination of that swirly. This is the mask that I've just painted. So you see it's a soft gray mask, not a solid black one. If I hide the underneath layer, you can see what I've painted through. And of course, if I hide the top layer, then we're just seeing the original layer. So I'm just showing this to you to drive the point home that you do have these familiar masking tools, just like you would find in Photoshop. So a lot of different ways to combine how you apply the filters, whether you are doing it to a selected part of the image using the control points, or doing it to the entire image and then blending those using layers in Affinity Photo. Totally up to you. It just depends on what you're doing with your image, but you do have all of those tools at your disposal.